Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Good to see everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's evening for me.
Good evening, then.
Good night.
So we'll just give it 1 or 2 more minutes just before we start.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, Mary.
Maria.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, a few more people in the waiting room, so another minute.
Good afternoon.
Everybody. So we're going to start in about 30 seconds. Okay, I think we can make a start. So I'm just going to put you all on mute, just so that we can have that, and we'll start. Well, I'll mute you guys later on. Okay. So welcome to the first dRep workshop. There was one earlier this morning for the different time zones. If you made that one, I think there's a couple actually on the list here that have joined that one and this one. So trying to get double information. It is the same content, so there is no difference in the workshop content from this morning, my time this morning, versus the workshop right now. So let's jump straight into it. So welcome to another experiment in true Catalyst fashion. This is another experiment. We fully recognize that, and we're really excited to start this journey with you guys as part of the first cohort for being a dRep and coming along with this journey with us. It wouldn't be a Catalyst experiment without this slide, so I'm going to read it just to help set the scene and the tone. Yeah, welcome to the experiment. Things may break, they may lack documentation, they may differ greatly between iterations, they may disorient, overload, and inspire, and our goal, as always, is to provide a safe and lively environment for you to explore the highest potential of human collaboration. So let's move on. We have a good agenda today, and the workshop here should take roughly half an hour, and then we have a good amount of time afterwards for Q&A. So plenty of time for everybody to have a question, to raise their hand and get that over to us. I'm Jack, by the way, for those that haven't met me. I'm the product marketing lead for governance at IOG. We're super excited for what governance is doing this year and into next. Charles alluded to that yesterday if you were on the town hall. So it's a really exciting time to be talking about governance, talking about Catalyst and all of that. So joining me today, I have Roman and Philip from the research team. They were instrumental in creating and designing how delegation and liquid democracy will look and work for Project Catalyst and the dRep role. And Harris as well is here as well. So any questions we can all answer. Okay. So just an overview really of workshops and sort of how we're going to be documenting these. So over the next 8 to 10 weeks, roughly, we're going to hold 3 or 4 workshops that will focus on the following. And today we're looking at liquid democracy, why delegation, and the dRep role. The second workshop, which we're looking to hold sort of end of June, early July, will take you through the new registration and voting center and also the dRep portal. So some of the more sort of technical user interfaces for how this will look and feel. And then the third and fourth workshop, we're going to be considering how we can create a code of conduct together that sort of fits the right role for the dRep and also the future for governance for dReps potentially as well. So just a big shout out to the QA DAO for supporting all the recordings for the workshops for today and into the future, the transcripts, the document hosting, and communication as well. So thanks to Stephen, Vanessa, and the QA DAO team as always. Let's move. And just a quick note to say that this deck will be shared post this call, and there's also a longer form version of this deck that expands on Philip and Roman and myself. And we share that via email, but also the Discord channel. So there is a dRep Discord sub-channel on the Project Catalyst server. Okay. What's the screen? There we go. So I'm going to hand over to Roman to talk about liquid democracy and what it means for Project Catalyst.
Thanks, Jack. So when we're speaking about democratic governance, we can have it in several ways. The first way, we already have it in Catalyst right now, when people just have direct voting on proposals and they support or downvote different proposals. But when we have too many proposals, it takes too much time from stakeholders to make decisions on all of them. So we need to have some other form of democracy. Another very popular form of democracy, which is widely used in parliaments and so on, it is called representative democracy. When people elect some committee, some parliament, and all this committee makes a decision. This approach has advantages, but also it has disadvantages. And we have the third form, the newest and the most advanced form of democracy, which is called liquid democracy. In liquid democracy, voters or stakeholders can vote directly on proposals, or they can delegate to representatives to dReps, and dReps will vote using delegated voting power. This provides us a very flexible, a very convenient model, and we are going to implement it in Catalyst. So when we are speaking about the very general model of liquid democracy, this very general model also allows redelegation, so one delegate can delegate to another and so on. But this creates some theoretical problems of having loops when we have a loop in delegation, and this voting power can be lost, or questions on optimal distributing voting power and so on. And because of this, we have, for Catalyst, we have a refined version of liquid democracy, where people can delegate to dReps. dReps can vote on proposals, but cannot redelegate to anyone else. And of course, stakeholders can vote directly on proposals if they prefer direct voting. So that's our approach with liquid democracy. Thanks.
Thanks, Roman. And yeah, like I said, any questions you have on anything, please save them to the end and we'll get to them. So now I'm going to hand over to Philip to talk about why delegation and dReps.
Thank you, Jack. So yes, so following what Roman said, this is a very specific form of liquid democracy where every voter, in addition to voting directly, they will also have the option of delegating their voting power to one dRep or even a set of dReps. It doesn't have to be just one. The stake can be split up among multiple dReps. And the idea for this, the primary goal that we wanted to address, was that the number of proposals is increasing, and it's no longer realistic to expect that every voter will have the time enough time to spend studying all the proposals and have an opinion on all of them. So rather than having voters vote on only a small part of proposals and abstaining of everything else, we want to bridge this information gap and add the option to delegate. So the voter can find a delegate who is similar to himself and delegate to to the dRep. So the way this would work is, if I could give an example of why whales are right now disproportionately controlling the election, you can imagine that we have 3 users, let's say, with votes. The first one has 50 votes and the other 2 have 30 votes each. And we have 3 proposals. Now, the first user is in favor of the first proposal and they vote yes. So the first proposal gets 60 votes. The other 2 users, if they had time to study the proposals, they would both agree that they'd like proposal B and C equally. However, because they don't have this coordination nor the time to study all the proposals, they might inadvertently split their vote and let the first user win. Yes, I see a question. Exactly. It's still one ADA, one vote. It's just that rather than voting directly, it can go through the dRep. So the dRep essentially can consolidate the power of many smaller voters that might inadvertently split their vote and be underrepresented. So these are the 2 main goals of this: to increase the voting participation and to bridge the voting power imbalance. And both of these should create a more optimal outcome, a more optimal selection of funded proposals. At the same time, we want to avoid introducing additional sort of weaknesses to the system. And as Jack will explain, we've introduced certain decentralization guarantees to make sure that the addition of dReps doesn't harm security in some way. And I think I'll hand it back to you, Jack, because there's a lot more content to go through.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Okay. So let's get into the dRep role. And essentially, you guys and the dRep role in general is trailblazing the path to the future of governance in Catalyst. And Charles again alluded to this yesterday for those that were at the town hall. And just to kind of get more simplistic with how Philip and Roman have just talked this through, you will canvass for voting power as a dRep within defined safeguarding parameters that we will get to. Vote delegators will delegate their voting power to you to use on their behalf for a particular fund. And the more ADA you have as a dRep by way of delegation naturally increases the ADA value behind each proposal vote. And there's just a sort of nod here to the registration process for being a dRep. We will get into the formal registration sort of flow and sort of how that looks in workshop 2. But I just wanted to sort of call out that there are 2 things that that will be prerequisites. Your wallet address must remain static, so it can't be changed once you've registered. This is to preserve voting history. And there will be a proof of life review once you've completed your registration. So it's just 2 sort of things to call out today. But as I said, we'll get into a lot more detail around the registration process and the voting center, the new ones that are coming in the next workshop. So yeah, let's get into the expectations. Okay, so number 1, and this probably is needless to say to the guys and girls on the group today that you already are acting as leaders within the community today through Catalyst. So that's already happening, but obviously being a dRep, there is it's a leadership position within the Catalyst community, and it shows that you have a vested interest in the future of Cardano. And as a consequence, we expect open collaboration, civil discourse between yourselves, proposers, proposal assessors, veteran proposal assessors, formerly community advisors, and of course the wider Project Catalyst ecosystem. Also, what's equally important is transparency. So we expect dReps to commit to transparency at all times and remain open if any conflicts of interest arise with other roles or positions within the community. And some of the expectations that we expect for dReps, you must provide voting rationale for each proposal that you vote on, which will be made public for your delegators to review. But we will share guidance and a template on how this will kind of look and feel in due course. And then there are some minimum asks. So along with providing voting rationale for each of your votes, going back to what Philip was talking about, one of the key goals really is for delegation to improve quality of decision making and just to create that more equal landscape with voting power. And so as a result, we've put a minimum cap here that you must vote on at least 60 proposals per fund, plus 20 challenge setting proposals. And that will make you eligible for dRep rewards. So I'll just sort of pause on this for a little bit because I appreciate it's quite a lot to digest. And as I said, we will be sharing this afterwards to return to offline as you wish. So yeah, 60 proposals, and 20 challenge setting proposals are the minimum asks to be eligible for rewards. And let's get into the rewards. So there is $3,060 available per fund for each dRep. Your rewards as a dRep will be based on delegated stake in proportion to all delegated stake per fund, so per every Catalyst funding round. If a dRep has 1% of all delegated stake, they will be eligible for the maximum reward of $3,060, as long as the minimum requirements are still met. The top 150 dReps by value of delegated voting power will be eligible for rewards. And just to sort of mention about the 1%, we've settled on this number as an important cap to prevent power concentration and to enforce decentralization. So just a sort of question around, what if I'm over delegated? What if I have 1.5% of delegated stake delegated to me, or what if I have less than 1%? So if you have over delegation, you will not receive any further rewards. So $3,060 is the cap, and neither will your delegators. And if you have less than 1% of delegated data, you will see your rewards decrease proportionately. And that's obviously as long as the minimum requirements of voting is met. Just to sort of illustrate this further, if you, for example, had 1.5% of total delegated stake, you would not be using the 0.5% extra as voting influence, and as I said, you won't get any rewards. So your voting power and your rewards are capped at 1%. I appreciate there will be questions, I'm sure, about that too towards the end. So as Philip mentioned, yes, we do have quite a lot of safeguarding measures in place. And as Roman also alluded to, we have a refined version of liquid democracy. It's liquid democracy and delegation that's been designed for Project Catalyst. We have safeguarding parameters in place that work against centralization and power concentration, which is obviously very important. As I mentioned, the dRep will be capped at 1% of all delegated stake, which excludes direct voting. So just again to illustrate that a bit more, if, for example, out of 100% of all votes, 50% of those votes are delegated, a dRep will have 1% of that 50% voting power. So direct voting still has its say in the direction of Catalyst. And again, as I mentioned, once a dRep has 1% of all delegated stake, they cannot earn more than the maximum reward, and they cannot exert greater voting influence over decision making. With each fund, delegation will make up a mix of direct voting and delegation. And as I mentioned, therefore the overall influence for a dRep will be less than 1%. There will be quite a lot of transparency to voting history and reputation. This will be via the voting center, which, as I said, we'll get to workshop 2. And then there's also, importantly, a delegation stake expiry after each fund. So there's no stake and forget like you have with SPOs. Your delegation will reset after each fund round. So those are sort of the, to step back a second, sorry, those are some of the safeguarding parameters we put in place to really help safeguard the future for Catalyst and also for Cardano moving forward. There are some changes to direct voting, which we will communicate more broadly outside of this cohort, but we're taking it to you guys first. Number one, going back to sort of improving outcomes and I suppose touching back as well how liquid democracy looks like and works. The ability of having control and freedom to choose what you do with your voting power remains a core principle. Liquid democracy allows that fluidity, so you can delegate your voting power or you don't have to delegate it. You can recall your voting power and you can choose a new dRep whenever you see fit. There's total freedom and total power that always remains with the individual. But nevertheless, liquid democracy does add a new dynamic to direct voting. So delegating voting power instead of direct voting can open up benefits to all voters. So not just those that want to be more passive in Project Catalyst. So the changes we're putting in, there will be some minimum asks now for direct voting to earn rewards. So for a voter participating directly, they will need to vote on a minimum of 30 proposals to earn voter rewards. And really important to note that if they do not hit the minimum, if you vote on 20 directly, your vote will still count, but it's just the reward element that will not be paid out. So it's really important to sort of call out that you're direct voting on 5 proposals or 20 proposals, that your voting power still matters and still counts. And then sort of, again, back to the rewards, direct voting will still earn that. The value of rewards per proposal will not be different. So if you delegated your vote or voted directly, the value of your reward per vote will be the same. But, you know, as you can sort of work out, if the minimum requirements for a dRep are to vote for 60 proposals, the voter rewards are going to be greater if you delegate. For the average, more passive voter, there are obviously some direct voters that vote on far more than 60, you know, into the hundreds, and it might not necessarily be more beneficial from a reward perspective. But just to sort of go back to that as well, the average volume of proposals voted on is roughly 10. So this is substantially, significantly improving the exposure to proposals being voted on with delegation and this minimum requirement. So we have got through that pretty quickly, similar timing actually to the other call earlier. That is a wrap. I just wanted to sort of give a summary to why liquid democracy, sorry. So importantly, it bridges the imbalance of voting power for lower wallet holders. It will increase the volume of proposals voted on, which drives better community outcomes. And delegation and dReps have been designed to avoid power concentration, centralization, and they work towards an anti-fragile structure. With dReps and direct voting, as we've said, $3,060 are the max rewards per dRep with a 1% max voting power cap. And they must have voted on at least 60 proposals and 20 challenge proposals. And then to earn voter rewards for direct voting, direct voters must vote on at least 30 proposals. If less, though, their votes will still count, as I've said. So that is sort of that's the workshop from a deck perspective. I'm going to open it up to questions. I think Philip's been answering questions through the chat. I haven't been able to look at those, so apologies. If you do want to ask a question, please raise your hand. I'm just going to sort allow everyone to be unmuted. Just give me a second. Okay, so I will start with Felix.
Yeah, one thing what I think is maybe quite important to mention, you touched on it very briefly on the beginning to say, okay, there are hundreds of proposals, but maybe also to say, hey, the current situation is that from 100% registered votes, only 20% votes actually, or something like this, right? The biggest part of the registered votes don't even vote. So I think it's also important a little bit to be transparent a little bit with the community, and especially the dRep applicants, and to say which felons do we actually really which challenges do we really face, and have a certain reality check, because it doesn't help any dRep to listen, for example, in town hall, 1 million votes and everything cool and everything fine. But oh, wait, only the minimum amount of registered votes actually vote. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, it's a great point, Felix, and I suppose it even speaks more broadly to what dReps can do, and there's awareness, and we have sort of passive wallets that have registered in previous funds and not voted in future funds. So we have a broader awareness campaign that we want to roll out, that we are rolling out. Consensus next week is a good one, just to drive up those passive wallets becoming active again, but also new wallets coming into the ecosystem. But it's definitely a good point, and it's something that we're aware of. Yeah. George.
Hey Jack, yeah, thanks for the presentation. So I'm interested in like conflicts of interest. So let's say I work and I make DAOs. So you know, I have a lot of experience in making DAOs, and that's kind of like my expertise. If I was doing proposals in DAOs, then it would be difficult for me to be a dRep because I'd have this kind of conflict of interest that I've got my own proposal and then other things I know a lot about. And obviously the two are very closely aligned. I'm an expert in doing this thing, so I'm very well suited to be a dRep for it. But if I'm that person, then it's like, oh, well, I think my solution's better than yours. So is there any guidelines or policies that are going to be going out for that? Is it can, just leave it to the community to decide what happens there, or what are your thoughts on that kind of dynamic?
Yeah, it's a great question. We had the similar one actually, George, in the first call as well. So we've sort of stressed here about being transparent and open as much as possible with conflicts of interest. But we equally recognise that there are communities that would want to vote for a dRep, or delegate their voting power to a dRep to act in a certain way, and that might involve a particular dRep already being an author of a proposal or being as part of a team on other proposal that they might vote for. So we've caught up about this today actually, just to sort of re-look at this, and we, as long as the transparency and openness is there, we don't have a problem with dReps voting on proposals that they're involved with, as long as that's absolutely clear to those that are delegating to you as a dRep, and also as part of the voter rationale for when you do vote on your certain ways. So we recognise that, and it's all about being absolutely transparent and open. Is there any more questions? Sorry, George, just to do, is there anything else you wanted to ask about that subject?
No, that's all good. I could ask other questions, but there's loads of other people who want to ask questions, so I will stop there.
Thanks. Okay, Sebastian, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So the dRep registration has any expiry date or any expired lower bound? For example, I register as a dRep and no one delegates to me. Does that mean I'm no longer a dRep in the next fund? And can dReps be veteran community reviewers and the rest of the roles in Catalyst?
Yeah, so two questions there. Yeah, so the first question is, your registration will not expire. So once you've registered through the registration process and you've been reviewed for proof of life, your profile as a dRep will exist for as long as you want it to exist, no matter how much delegation you get or may not get. What does expire is your delegated ADA per fund. So that's what expires. But your registration as a dRep doesn't expire unless you want it to. And then the second question around roles within the community, sort of similar to George's, that we expect and want you to commit to having openness completely and registering conflicts of interest. We will have a way of doing that so that you can be very clear that I'm a CA, I'm a VCA, I'm a proposer on this, for example, or I'm a circle rep. All of the different roles that we have within the community, we just expect people to be very honest and open about that. Nori.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'm super excited to see this kicking off. I had a couple of questions. One was, are dReps individuals or can groups sign up? For example, I know Cardano for Climate has been like, maybe we can be dReps to look at all the impact initiatives and kind of focus on that, and people who are interested can use our work there. So can groups sign up? And then the second one is more philosophical, just wondering if quadratic voting is ever on the cards or in the future roadmap coming up to limit power as a mechanism as well.
Okay, thanks, Murray. Good questions. Actually, Harris, just to put you on the spot, do we want to tackle the first one about groups and individuals?
Yeah, sure. So the intent for the initial part of this is we will actually support a wallet. So the wallet is what is actually registering. So if there is a wallet that happens to be shared, or if there's specific access for individuals in an organization, it will have the ability and power to vote. So it's not necessarily a multi-sig kind of situation. It is really focused on a single wallet. So however you decide to share that across an organization, but there'll be an interface for you to register. There'll be the ability for delegates or passive voters to actually delegate to that wallet, but it's at the sort of the wallet level specifically. And so, it doesn't necessarily restrict groups, but it's really at the wallet level.
Thanks, Harris. And Philip, would you mind, or Roman, talking through Quadratic a little bit?
Yeah, so quadratic voting, to be effective in limiting the voting power, the disparity, let's say, in voting power, at least to be provably able to do this, we'd also need to have some form of tying wallets to real life IDs. Otherwise, anybody could, theoretically, if they're inclined, start splitting their wallets until they're happy with their delegation, with their voting power. So before we managed to find a way to anonymously handle real life identities on chain without harming all the anonymity requirements, it's unlikely that it will happen within the next 2 funds, let's say.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Eastine, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Hey, that's fine. Thank you for your presentation. So 2 questions. One is for voters. What happens when you're above the 1%? Is it divided between all of the voters, what they lose in rewards? Or is it the last voter after the 1%? And is this easily shown in the voting center? So that's my first question about voting. And the second question, I'm really also interested in collaborations and how are these reputations generated? Can it be a group who generates reputation? That's my questions.
Okay, thank you. Good questions. Philip or Ramon, do you want to talk about the over delegation and how the rewards will flow through if dRep is over delegated to?
Not sure I fully get the question. So what happens if we have over delegation? Am I right?
Yeah, if you have over delegation, what happens to the voter rewards for being over delegated?
Oh, okay, yeah. So if we have some over delegation, and in this case, we have some reward which is bind to delegation to a single dRep. So currently it's up to 1% of the total reward. And if this reward, if this dRep is over delegated, then this reward is shared among all dReps who among all stakeholders who delegated to this dRep, and proportionally to their delegated stake. So, for example, if a dRep was delegated with 2% of voting power instead of 1%, then reward will be just halved.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And then your second question was about how easy could that be seen at the voting center. Harris, I don't know if you have any comments about how saturation level will look.
Yeah, so in our MVP, we definitely have the ability to sort of delegate, and we are looking at the best way to kind of communicate that. We'll likely follow some of the existing delegation model that we have for staking, following that kind of model. So it would be shown within the interface, and that's something that we're actually working on. So we do have some pretty advanced designs in terms of what we have in mind for the voting center itself, and the dReps and the delegation piece of it would be available to any wallet that would follow sort of a wallet standard and be able to connect to it. And the idea is that you would have enough information to be informed about over delegation. So it's unclear exactly how messaging would happen if things become over delegated. But ideally, you can go into this interface and change as many times as you want leading up to the actual snapshot, which is really where delegation and voting power really becomes determined. So there's a number of things we're considering in this, but trying to add things into the MVP as much as possible. And we'll certainly be sharing that interface sort of in the next dRep sessions.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Harris. Okay, Dana.
Hello, sorry, it took me a second to get to the mute. So 2 questions, and I apologize if this is already a well-known fact, but can you tell me how many people are already registered as dReps, 1, and 2, can you explain a little bit more what the validating or explaining which way I'm voting goes? Is that like, so can a person be a community advisor and their assessment is pretty much their explanation is why they voted a certain way, or are CAs and dReps like completely separate? And it's just like, is this going to be doubling work? So yes, if you can explain those 2 questions, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so the voting center will have the list of dReps and actually, Harris, do you want to just, I think you might be best placed to answer this question actually.
Yeah, so in theory, you could, there's no hard limitation in terms of performing both roles. The one thing that you will have, as a dRep is your voting history will be public, and you'll have to sort of sign a privacy policy stating that your voting history would be public. So you would have the ability to see it. So there's nothing precluding you from potentially having both roles. I don't know if that answers your question, Dana.
Yeah, and Dana just.
Well, yeah, no, it does answer that question. But so can you just tell me how much work is going to go into, like, what is going to be required or expected of somebody, like explaining why they voted a certain way? And I saw something in the chat earlier that was interesting too. So you have to explain whether you voted. So for everything you vote on, you have to explain why you voted yes and why you voted no. So I would like that question answered. And then I just want to know what the total number of dReps are.
Yeah.
As of right now.
So total number of dReps that expressed an interest was roughly 220 so far, which is really encouraging. The formal registration for dReps hasn't taken place yet, as you know, so that's part of the next workshop and into the future when we launch that, which the numbers will change. dRep registration will always be open, so it's not going to be a closed sort of circle and no one controls when a dRep can come in and not come in. It's just that this is obviously the first cohort that we're onboarding in this way. And then the rationale question, we're not expecting it to be too time consuming. We're expecting it to be a sort of minimum character count, but not a high level. So, short 1-2 sentences is sort of roughly what we're thinking, but we'll provide guidance and templates to make that life a bit easier. But yes, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, you don't have to have a plug. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So also about rationale on the decision. What is the difference between CA and dReps? We will provide more detailed materials, but it's different roles. So we may have concurrent proposals which solve the same task. dRep should be aware of these concurrent proposals and to say that among all of them, this one is the best. Besides that, dRep should also consider Cardano development strategy and say, okay, this corresponds to Cardano development strategy. Among these 10 really great proposals, we should prioritize only this one, and this one can be resubmitted later or something like that. So it provides a higher level view on the system, and this helps stakeholders to understand whether such people strategically look at Cardano development and whether they should, whether they're satisfied with decision-making quality, and whether they should keep delegation to this dRep, or whether they should to select another dRep.
Thanks, Roman. Hopefully, Dana, that helped cover that question. Richard.
Oh, yeah, my question was related to what was which is really about transparency.
You're breaking up for me, Richard. I'm not sure if it's just me.
Yeah, I
Can
can't
you
hear you either.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is that
it's a bit
better?
robotic, but we'll try again.
My question was related to the transparency and rationale and how you arrive that. And if you've got dReps, how are you going to help them to become competent in knowing the Cardano environment as it grows so that they can demonstrate performance, show how when they come to that rationale. So where's the professional knowledge so that you get consistency across all dReps, you know? Have you developed any framework to help them get that knowledge into themselves and then be able to give quality rationale to what they make a decision or
Yeah.
Yes, quite important because otherwise you're down to the biases of the individual or his interests.
Yeah, and I caught them. Hopefully, most of what the gist of the question was. Sorry, Richard. The rationale and transparency and openness is obviously really important, and we're stressing that a lot. That part of the registration process will involve you creating a bio, registering your interests, tags, and sort of motivations. So that's very public facing, and delegators can look at that before they delegate to you to understand, you know, where your expertise is potentially, or where your interests are, and if they align to theirs. And then around the sort of guidance and helping create a professional class in some ways, we are looking at providing guidance and templates to support consistency across the board. And obviously the minimum requirements help create some level of consistency too. But we also recognize that, you know, with your help and with everyone on the first cohort of dReps help, we'll shape this together. You know, we don't have all the answers today, and we're looking for everybody here to help support that too. Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, if you've got experience in this, how do you input that to actually help build those toolings so people can have consistency and historical consistency? So is there going to be further stages where we're allowed to put that input in?
Yeah, absolutely. Your input is always, as it is right now, very welcome, and it'll also be welcome on Discord for the moment. I think we'll probably look to have more sort of formal workshops that could tackle some of this, and potentially Harris, you know, we've talked as well having a circle rep that's a dRep representative as well, to help sort of frame discussions and processes for dReps moving forward. So yes, it's all to sort of play for, Richard, and we're happy to work with you and everyone really for feedback on this.
Thanks for that.
No problem. Okay, George, I've seen you up again, unless that's your same hand.
I rejoined the queue. That was me being British polite. But it's a cracking question, I think. So if I want to vote on it, say I want to vote on governance and DAO stuff, but I want to delegate my vote for other things like infrastructure or community elsewhere, does that have to be a percentage term? So if I say I have to give away 50%, which means my power is only 50% for what I'm voting on, the 50% elsewhere is being with the other dRep, or can I have my full voting power for the things I'm voting for, and I'm giving full voting power for all of it for the other, you know, rep or even multiple dReps? Because if that exists, in that case, then I'd need to have like a priority order. Like if I vote on something that they do, then I get priority, and then it's like this order of execution. How does the technical kind of side work on that side, or is it just literally you just have to allocate?
Philip, do you want to take that question?
I can start on it, for sure. Yeah, so you know the MVP for this is actually going to be pretty simple. So it's either you are voting yourself, which you can retain that power to vote, and you can delegate 100% of your voting power. So initially, it will be specifically for Catalyst proposals, and it will be tied to those funding or those actual voting events. In the future, there could be some separation of voting event types, and we could actually have it. So I'm going to allocate a percentage of delegation for this voting event or these types of voting events. So that could be a future state. But initially, it's all in. You're either delegating or you're not delegating. And so it's going to be a pretty simple approach initially that we're taking. And so you'll have to make that decision. Now, you can change it at any time, right up before the thing, before a voting event, or a catalyst fund vote cycle, that you could withdraw it all and be like, you know what, I'm going to vote myself. You could do that at any point in time leading up to the snapshot. And so there'll be tools available for delegation to be able to make those changes. And it ultimately is really just a record of a certificate that gets written to mainnet that dictates sort of how delegation actually takes place through something known as CIP36. So that's the ultimate format. So we're providing some tools that will enable it. There's a lot of capabilities related to flexibility, and you could delegate to 100 people. There's not a lot of limits to that. And in the future, we can do it based on voting events and other things as well. So that's something we're considering, but we're starting with an MVP with a specific interface that's designed.
Okay, cool. The kind of follow-on I would say is, if you could do it, so I have my full voting power and I could delegate, let's say, to 5 people, so they have the full voting power for the things they're voting on. That to me would be like the ultimate solution. And then the thing on top of that is to add in some sort of rules. For instance, I delegate to this dRep who just votes on small proposals. They're only like 10,000 size. And that's the criteria that I want them to uphold by. And or maybe it's tagged. It's like, I just want them to focus on some DeFi related things or some other kind of rule set. That would be like the perfect situation, because then like the person who is that dRep who's doing, let's say, DeFi, well, what if they want to vote on loads of other areas as well that they might also going to be a specialist in, but I'm only trusting them for the DeFi side. Like that's the part that I'm focused on with them. I think they're really good at understanding that, but I do not necessarily agree with everything they're working on elsewhere. So having that kind of and I'm probably thinking about a few years ahead, having that kind of rule set and criteria would be fantastic, because then I can tailor the exact kind of voting experience I want for who I trust for what things and for how I want to participate myself, as well as allocating the full voting power.
Yeah, we do have an initial set of tags, so there'll be like a DeFi tag, and you can sort of dReps by those tags. So that kind of definition will become part of it. And certainly, George, we should probably talk more about some of the research you have in categorization and how that sort of ties together with what those tags are. But it can change, it can evolve. We'll probably start with an initial set, but that would likely be a living thing where new tags get created. But anyway, so the idea is that you could filter, it helps you in the selection of dReps. Initially, the dReps will be sort of randomized, so there's no preferential treatment, but you can search for specific things and criteria and tags, and that will help you filter like who's appropriate. So I like people that like DeFi and metaverse kind of stuff, and I can search for those dReps, allocate them. You don't have any specific controls of where they actually vote, but you can see their voting history after they've had a cycle or two, and you get a sense of like, hey, I thought you were voting for the metaverse, and now you're not. Like I'm going to change my delegation. So that's a little bit of the logic that we have so far.
Perfect. That's super exciting. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, George. Okay, just conscious of time, actually, we've only got 10 minutes left of this call, so I know there's a few people with hands. So if can no more join the queue, if that's okay, that we do have Discord open for further questions that I'll be monitoring, as well as the community team. So let's jump to Min.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I know the community had a lot of questions, and thanks for hosting this space to give us a lot of information. I actually had 4 questions, so I'm just going to limit it to 2, and I'll bring the questions to Discord. So just to clarify, right, what are the selection criteria for dReps? Can you guys share that, or not really?
So the criteria for being a dRep is that we expect you to have voted on in a previous fund round. So there's sort of that one prerequisite. But also to be a dRep essentially will require delegators to delegate their stake to you. So anyone can essentially sign up to be a dRep as long as there is the little bit of voting history, so that you have had some involvement in Catalyst. But otherwise, that's the level that we're at. Yeah. And there's proof of life as well.
Gotcha. So that's the only one to select the 150 out of the 220 applications that you guys have gotten?
Yeah, so we asked everyone out of the 220 expressions of interest that they had voted on a previous fund round. And then there will be, the proof of life review as well, as a safety net.
Okay. My second question, I heard someone mention quadratic voting, right? And Sybil, quadratic Sybil resistance. Is the bar to really have KYC for wallets, or have effective quadratic Sybil resistance that either or both, right? To implement quadratic voting into Catalyst.
Yeah, so I'll defer to, good question, I'll defer to Philip. That's okay, Philip.
Oh, sorry, I'm answering private messages. Could you ask again?
Yeah, Philip, thank you. Before you mentioned that in order the bar to implement quadratic voting into Catalyst is to have KYC or some kind of real identity linked to wallets that are voting, in order to prevent Sybil attacks. But there are other methods for preventing Sybil attacks that don't require KYC. So we can do some research into quadratic Sybil resistance. Is that also an alternative? Okay, awesome.
I don't know of any high quality research done in the preventions of those attacks. Like if we can do something that's like robust mathematically, then definitely we can go ahead. Actually, this type of direction, like not having to do full KYC, but getting the benefits of doing KYC partially without it is something that we're pursuing.
Awesome.
So yeah, we can definitely discuss more about this.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, let's move to Darlington.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time today. My question has to do with, we mentioned about interfaces and UI and voting center and maybe something being in the wallet. So the question is about the data that's going to be powering this interface. Would that be available publicly in some programmable interface like an API, or is that going to be walled garden and only accessible via the interface that the team is working on?
Harris, I'll let you pick up on that if that's okay.
Yeah, I can take that. So yeah, all of the interface is powered by APIs, and those APIs will be available with our open API structure that's forthcoming. And so that's a big part of what will be released in the initial API package, is basically powering the voting center. There may be some information that is private, just for GDPR that we have to protect, but maybe if you're a trusted partner or something of that nature, then it would be available. So anyway, but yeah, it will be all API powered.
So just quickly follow up on that. Is that something that's coming together, or is the API lagging behind the UI?
No, the entire UI is powered by the APIs. So yeah.
And so on day one, when the UI launches, the API will also be available. Is that the target? Is that the plan?
That's the plan. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Darlington. Okay, Zoe.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the wallet situation. Since you said there has to be a voting history, so does that mean that first I cannot make a new wallet just for dRep? And does that also mean that the previous voting history will be revealed? And what about the CA wallet? If you could elaborate on this.
Yeah, Harris, I think we can say that the dRep wallet can be a new one, but part of the proof of life, you can validate your history, voting history, with a previous wallet address so that we can just validate that you voted in Fund 8, for example. But the wallet address for being a dRep does need to remain fixed, but I think it could be new. Harris, am I speaking out of turn?
Yeah, no, I think you got it perfect, Jack. The idea is that you would want to select a wallet that will become public. So we're not going back in history because we don't have your permission to do that. And so we're not going to expose your former voting history, but we do know that we maybe that for a specific wallet, we paid you voting rewards. So to us, that's a signal that we know, okay, that wallet has voted before because we paid you voting rewards. And so that might be some of our indications. So we're stepping into it slowly. That's why we have the proof of life, that we, that's why we have this initial cohort. Ultimately in the future, it's just like, hey, we see this wallet detected, you attached it to this interface. We see a sense of voting history automatically, and we just automatically approve. But that will be in the future, right? So initially, it's a bit of a manual process to make sure you're real. That might be shared with the community in terms of the validation of who people are, and are they a legitimate person and not some bot that's trying to become a dRep, these kinds of things. And so there's considerations that we have there. But ideally, you want to choose wisely, right? Maybe you use the same wallet you've been voting with. And become a dRep with that. And again, it would just be from the fund that we actually start with moving forward that would become public. Anything historically would not be shared.
And may I give ask a small follow-up?
Sure.
Does the dRep wallet also need to contain 500 ADA?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Zoe. Okay, Nori, I think you're back for second round.
Yeah, just some follow-up questions. Can dReps be pseudonymous? Like, can quasars and bullish dumplings stay that way? Or do they have to reveal their true identities to become a dRep? And then the second question is, can dReps delegate to other dReps, either part or all of their delegation in true liquid democracy form?
So Harris, you can have pseudonymous. We can do that, can't we?
Yeah, we're not doing KYC, so there's going to be a name field. We're suggesting you use a real name because ideally you become a representative and people get to know you, but there's nothing preventing you from putting bullish dumpling or quasar as your name. It's your sort of community identity, so that's fine. Because there's a level of communications that we'll have sort of between dReps, we will ask for an email, but other than that, it's not required you share that email publicly, but it is, part of the, communication and cohort arrangements and coordination and things like that will be required in the initial MVP anyway.
And just in the second question, Nori, I think back to the MVP point, we won't be able to delegate dRep to dRep. Did I understand that, Harris?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. You can't do these sort of nested delegations.
Is that ever in the cards? Just from the introduction to liquid democracy, it looked like that was kind of part of the scheme there.
It's something that we can certainly take away with the research team and yeah, consider. Yeah, nothing sort of off the table, put it that way. Okay, Harsha. Sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly.
Yeah, you're muted, Harsha.
Harsha, are you there?
Oh, my bad, sorry, thank you for that. So my question is the expectation for the dReps to make siloed decisions, or can they have like an open Discord where the community can give suggestions and they can take from these suggestions and vote based on that?
Yeah, we would encourage collaboration and open discourse through various different channels. And as a dRep, you sort of have your profile that you've registered with and your interests and your tags that delegators have delegated their voting power to you for that reason. So we would expect you to operate sort of individually when it comes to voting exactly when you're enacting voting itself, casting your votes. But in terms of the build up to that, we would absolutely expect you to collaborate and work together and talk things through and have any questions. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sebastian.
Thanks. Do people delegating to a dRep get voting rewards? And if their dRep fails to reach the 60-20 threshold, does that mean that they lose those rewards? So are people going to scream at me if I fail to complete that threshold?
So voter rewards are paid out if you delegate your voting power. And Philip or Roman, just want to, if they don't hit the minimum thresholds, can you remind me of?
Yes. So at least for the first version, we do not have this requirement. So if you delegate, you will get your reward. The level of your reward will depend only of whether this dRep was over-delegated. So it's enough for you to delegate to write dRep, and you will get your reward. If dRep fails in the first fund with delegation, it doesn't hurt people who delegated to this dRep.
Thanks, Roman. Thanks, Sebastian. So yeah, so voters are not impacted regardless if a dRep does not hit the minimum requirements. It's the dRep that will not be rewarded for their work. Tommy.
The more I listen, the more I have questions. I hope you will take the chat transcript and take all the relevant points from there and make some sort of FAQ, because this is a lot to take in and you went through it quite fast. Okay, so where is this 459,000 coming from?
459,000, sorry.
3,060 times 150.
So that is a proportion of voter rewards taken out of the fund. So the current fund date, it was used as a fund date figure for voter rewards, and it was a percentage of that.
Okay. The other question about the campaigning or canvassing or whatever you call that, Harris mentioned something that it's randomized who votes for you. Did I?
No, the randomized is the sorting of dReps. When a voter comes to the voting center to pick their dReps, the list of dReps will be randomized, so there'll be no order preference to given to anyone for any different reason. It's completely randomized.
Can they search?
They can search. They can search by name. They can search by tags.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then last question: that challenge that we have in Fund 9. If someone suggests something ludicrous and it gets voted in, will it take effect?
That's a very open question, Tommy, because I'm not sure how ludicrous it could be. We would have to.
I can be very ludicrous.
We'd have to judge that at the time. I'm afraid I couldn't really give an opinion on it right now. I don't know if Harris, you want to comment on that, but it's quite hard to say anything. But we do expect that challenge to sort of offer us an option, offer the community an option to improve some of the possibly documentation that we have, or any of the processes around collaboration and those kind of things. But yeah, Harris, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's ludicrous and it's voted in, then we love ludicrous, I guess. But yeah, it's awesome that the community's already put forth this sort of intent for dRep improvements, and so I think that we'll just have to take it as it comes. I don't think there's anything precluding any random ideas from being put in as proposals.
Oh, and I had one more question about what you mentioned like 48 minutes ago, that it pays off for the passive voters to delegate because the minimum is 60 for the dReps and 30 for them. What did you mean with that?
So, for example, if I'm a passive voter, and passive voter could be defined in various ways. It could be that I've never voted before on Catalyst, and I decide I've got some ADA and I want to participate in Catalyst, but I don't have any time to vote on anything, so I will delegate my voting power to a dRep. You'll get at least voter rewards of 60 because that's the minimum requirement for a dRep. If you're a more active voter but still passive, as in that you vote on maybe 10 proposals or 15 proposals, you're rewarded in greater numbers, obviously, because the minimum requirement.
So wait. Are you saying that the more you vote, the more you get?
Well, the voter rewards are increased per proposal.
I thought it was, at least before that, it's enough to vote for one and you get the rewards.
So as for now, you need to delegate and you will get your reward. If you prefer to vote directly, you need to vote at least for 30 catalyst proposals and also for 10 challenge proposals. And when you reach this criteria, this criteria, you will get rewarded. And if you vote not on 30, but on 100 proposals, for example, it will not increase your reward.
Yeah, Jack.
Sorry, that was a misspoke there.
Okay. And just for clarity, so if you're an active voter, that means you're voting yourself. If you're a passive voter, then you're basically delegating your vote to dReps. So that's just kind of a simple definition of what we mean by that for the MVP.
Okay, we are close at time, but I know Tivo's had his hand there, so we'll go to Tivo as the last question.
Is there a list of Discord names of those who are dReps? And because in the Discord there was discussion that those dReps would be nice to have their specific roles, but instead of self-assigning for now, it would be nice if they are like given by moderator who fact checks, is it actually a dRep? So if there is no list of Discord names, then is there going to be any survey which IAG is going to run towards us, and we could include that whoever wants a role, a specific role in the Discord channel, would put his name there. And if not that, then I guess we will figure it out ourselves in the community.
Yeah, I'll help you with that, Tivo, offline, and we can make a plan. Okay, thanks, guys. There's loads of questions there, and Tommy, you rightly alluded to there being lots of questions in the chat as well as over the mic. So we will be building an FAQ. We will have a dRep portal that will house all the documentation. There will be transcript work provided by QA-DAO for these workshops too. So we are documenting everything that is being discussed here and on the previous call as well earlier. So there is lots of work and lots of documentation to do, but yeah, we'll work on that. So I appreciate your time, everyone, and sort of to reiterate that this is an experiment and a really exciting one. We can't wait for this to sort of roll out, and we're very happy and privileged that you guys have put your hands up to get involved at the beginning, and we definitely value your feedback and recognise the time you spent here today. So thank you again. Harris, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
Oh, just really grateful for everyone volunteering to take this on along with us, and we're looking to learn from each other in the process, and just glad you're part of the MVP here. It'll be great.
Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Goodbye.
guys. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.